Next up, we're going to learn how to work with functions in Python. So let me first create a new file for functions and call it functions.py. Inside of it, we can define a new function, def new function, and inside of it, first of all, let me talk about functions. In functions, we can have inputs, outputs, which are going to be returned, and we have a process inside a function which is going to bring the end result. And then by calling the function, we're going to have the process happening any number of times that we want, and in this way functions are going to make our life much easier and faster, so that we don't have to repeat the processes that are going to be used a lot. So for example, there is a process that takes 7 lines of code or maybe more, then we want to repeat it over and over again. So for example, we want to have a kind of a mathematical operation, or for example, we want to calculate something, we want to have a kind of a process happening on a certain variable that is going to be input to this function, and we want to have an output. So generally, this is the reason we use functions, and but here for the very first function, we don't want to have any input or output, and we're going to simply see how we can use a certain function. So here I write hello from function, and then I'm going to call this function and say new function, and then we're going to see, okay, here def new function, and then we've called the new function. Because it has no input, here we put no input, and without writing this function, new function here, this function will not work. We only have a block of code that doesn't work. So in order for this function to work, we need to call it afterwards. So let's save this code and run Python 3 functions.py. And here, as you can see, hello from function. So we've entered the function, and if I comment this function call, it will have nothing. It's just a function, but it's not going to be run or activated. We only activate it by calling a function, which is writing the name of the function with all of the inputs that are necessary for this function. And if there is no input, we write nothing inside the parentheses. Notice that without these parentheses here, this new function will be considered as a variable, and we will face an error. Now we want to know how inputs in the functions work. So for example, we have another function, def name of the player, and in there we're going to introduce the name of the players. So here name is the input variable, and inside of it we can write print, and here we can print, first of all, we can print the name or the player's name, is, and plus, and inside here we write name, and then we're going to write name of the player, and inside of the parentheses we have the arguments or parameters, and no difference. So here instead of name we can write, for example, Mike, and this one should print out the player's name is Mike. So you also need to have a space here inside the string, and there we go. The player's name is Mike, and this is hello from function, which is related to this other function. I'm going to comment it here. So here we have the inputs, and the input here is going to be put inside a variable, and the variable is going to bring us to the print here. So Mike is going to place instead of the name, and after the player's name is blah blah blah, and the name. Okay, so and there are moments that we have the outputs, and in order to place the output we write return. So for example, we can return a string, return, and inside of here we can write print. We can write exactly this string right here. So we're going to return a string, which is this, and here, for example, we can write name of player, and Sally is the name, and we can print the result. You can also change this print right here, and instead of it you can return the player name. The player's name is plus name. So here it does the same thing as the previous one. So let me also comment this name of the player, Mike. The player's name is Sally. So here, as you can see, there is no difference. We have the same thing happening here, except that here we use the input and print inside of the function, and in the second part we commented this print right here and return the result, and then print the result of the output of the function from outside of the function. Also, suppose that we want to have a kind of functions that we don't know how many input variables it's going to have, but we're going to use all of those variables and do something with them, but we're not sure exactly how many inputs are there inside the new function. So here I'm going to define another function and call it another function, and for the kind of circumstances where we don't know how many inputs are going to be placed inside of the parentheses, we use asterisks, and then we can write input, for example, and inside of it we can print the second player of the team is, and then we don't know how many players are inside the team and how many are going to be input in the function. We only know that we are looking for a second player of the team. So if there's a list related to the team, we use the input, which is the list we've got inside the function, the list of the input variables, and we use the position 1, which is related to the second player. So as a result, when we have a kind of function like this, we can call this function another function, and then inside the parentheses we can write another player, so the name of the players. So for example, we have Joey, we have Mike, we have Sully, we have Anderson, we have so many other players. For example, we have Donald and so on, and there could be any other number of players. For example, 22 players, it could be 50 players, I don't know. There could be any number of players, and it doesn't really matter. But here we're looking for the second name inside this list, which is Mike. So if I run this code, also let me comment other prints so that we don't mix up the result of this one with the other ones, and print it out. The second player of the team is Mike. So here we use asterisks for the times we don't know how many inputs we're going to have when we're calling the function. For example, one time it could be 5 players, the other time it could be another function. We give it another list, and the list contains other names. For example, James and Jack are the only 2 players of the team, and Jack. And as a result, Jack will be printed out for this one. So for the second one, Jack is the second player of the team. For the first one, Mike is the second player of the team. And as you can see, the number of inputs differ in the 2 calls, but the function is the same, and it is not determined how many inputs we're going to have, but the function works the very same way for the 2 call of the function.